War is a complex affair. Every country has its own strategic culture and operational and logistic doctrines. Invaders had their own strategy, while the kingdom and empires followed a more nuanced culture. Today, we have Sonal Mittal from Surat. Lucknow cantonment is a fascinating cantonment. It came up during the British time. Before 1857, it was across the river in a place called Badia. But for many reasons, it came to its present location. So she will be talking to us as to how this cantonment came about in cartographic terms, what it looked like, what existed there, and then superimposing and things like that. Sonal Mittal is an architect, artist, and an educator. She holds a PhD from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, M. Architects from SPA Delhi, and B. Arch from Lucknow University. She's co-founder of Research and Conservation Studio People for Heritage Concern and teaches at CEPT University, Ahmedabad. Her work transcends architecture, landscape, queer studies, history, and heritage, focusing on process and agencies of ecological survival, contingencies of identity and representation, and emergent intersectionality in shaping the built environment. She is co-consultant for restoration of the Surat Castle and urban revitalization projects commissioned by city municipal corporations. She has published government officers' housing projects in urban Lucknow, that is Bloomsbury 2020, last year, Lucknow Unrestrained this year, 2021. She has exhibited widely across the globe, Matter in the Future Continents in Venice, the Sentinel Ruins, India Pavilion, London Design Biennial 2021, Lucknow Unrestrained, Shrishti School of Arts and Design. Her artworks have also been exhibited in Sweden, USA, Netherlands, Taiwan, and India. She is currently working as a co-author on a book that offers a feminist perspective of Lucknow architecture, especially that built by Asaf Ud-Daula, Nasiruddin, and Wajid Ali Shah. And most importantly, she is from Lucknow. So let's hear from you, Sonal. What do you have to talk about Lucknow Cant almost 150 years back?
Thank you, Major General, and thank you all of you at the Military Lit Fest for having me. It's really a pleasure and an honor for me to be part of this forum. I will share my screen. Yes, I can. So this is more a visual journey, and it's a work in progress. It's not a complete research. It's not in its complete state, but I have collected a few maps that I could find about cantonment. Mostly you will see that they are not about the cantonment, they are about the rest of the city. But what I am inviting you to go with me along this journey of reading the maps in detail and taking a closer look and seeing what are the things, comparing it with today's Google Earth imagery and seeing what it is today, what got erased, what got transformed, and so on and so forth. So it's a simple presentation, and Major General, if I run out of time, please flag it up. I'll stop immediately. So we'll move forward. This is basically just a few lines. The red line is the current cantonment boundary. The black line is a railway line, and the blue line is the river. These did not exist from the first map which I found, which is of 1841. But I'm still keeping these lines there for the sake of reference. So here you can see that what is inside the pink line, there is a banda. It's just like a small embankment. We have the Bibiapur Koti and we have the Dilkusha Koti inside the cantonment boundaries. And apart from that, some kacha roads that are going, there's also a road that says it goes to Rai Bareli. That's it. cantonment. So that is something we have there. You will also notice that these maps, when you overlap, they don't actually match. So you can see the river course is changing, although the shape is the same. So what happens is that in historical maps, because there's so much of um, it's photocopied or it's copied so many times, there is a lot of distortion that also happens. So we'll have, I've tried to account for that, but still there are a lot of discrepancies that you will notice. So moving on, there were other maps again of 1841. I've the earlier 1841 is at the back. I've superimposed another 1841 map, and you can see that there is much more in 1841 than it is shown in the previous map. And you will see that there is a Mahmud Bagh. And the ones who are in Lucknow cantonment, they would know Mahmud Bagh very closely because a lot of you visit it, and it's called now the MB Club. So the club was actually part of this garden, which was an enclosed garden. And you see in greater detail, you can see that it was a square. It was a complete square, and you can see that there is a small structure inside the Mahmud Bagh, and we do not see that periphery anymore. Similarly, you can also see on the right, on the left hand side, there is a small koti called Martin Ki Koti. For the ones who are familiar with Lucknow history, Claude Martin was a very important builder in Lucknow, and he had all over the, including Lamats, which you can see right above near the river. So his house became La Martiniere College, which is one of the best known colleges in the country. He was a prolific builder, and he had one of his houses here, which is now demolished. That memory is now gone because now a railway track has come over it. There are other things you can see in the cantonment, like the village. There are a couple of villages. There are some odd settlements here and there. And then there is the Dilkusha Deer Park. We, as residents of Lucknow, we get to hear these names on and off as names of roads and as names of locations, but we don't necessarily see that footprint. So that's the 1841 map. It's faded out, and then another 1841 map is superimposed on that, which gives us completely different information. And here we see again the Mahmud Bagh, but in here we see two other baghs. I'll zoom into it. And that's the zooming in. Here you will see the Mahmud Bagh, that fortified garden, which is your MB Club now. But on the side, you also see the Dhania Mehri Ka Bagh. It's not something that is written about a lot, just a few references here or there. This was made by Nasiruddin Haidar, the Nawab of Lucknow, and he built it for one of his women in the harems. Yeah, the name suggests itself, Dhania Mehri. The Mehri was not the queen; she served the king, and was part of his harem. So he created a bagh for that. There is another bagh you can see on the right, which is the Velaiti Bagh, which was also made by Ghaziuddin Haidar, again for one of his wives here. And Dilkusha is there. A lot of other buildings are coming up in the cantonment area. It's still not the cantonment, but one of them is a hospital, one of them is a military prison. So these things are starting to come up, and you can also, contextualize it, that how the English are again trying to create a stronghold in this area, especially because it is a very important place, considering that it was on the processional route to it was on the royal processional route. A few interesting things that you see on the map on the left hand side, outside the cantonment, something which is highlighted. They are the ice pits, and Lucknow had a huge history of making their own ice. And Alan Shawley has written a very interesting narrative about how ice was made in the 1800s. used to dig under the ground and keep clay pots when it was very cold winter months and keep them buried. They would, they would freeze the water and then they would keep it underground stored. And whenever they would want to take them out for summer purposes, that is where they would dig in. So these ice pits, they lay right outside the cantonment. Later, why this is important is that later there was an ice factory and an ice house that became part of the cantonment. So we zoom back out and we fade out that 1841. And then we have another map, which is the 1856 map, in which clearly again the Dilkusha Park, the Mehmood Park becomes very clear. And you can see these little villages, the Jamaita, Budeva, Fulailganj and all those things are just names, but the villages have gone. They are something of a typology of an urban village. Um, Mehmood Bagh is very clear here with the fortification wall and a structure. We zoom back out, we fade it, and then we have another 1857 map. It's pretty much the same information in a different format, but why? Two things stand out for me in this, that there was a baradari within the cantonment, which we have not been able to locate. And you can see that most of the bungalows during the 1857, that is before the uprising, they lay outside of the cantonment. The cantonment was pretty much the area where they put up all their, that is the area where they had lodged all their soldiers and things like that. They had camped there, but the bungalows were never part of this location until 1857. You can also see the route of Colin Campbell's advancement, which went through the Mehmood Bagh and through the cantonment. These are all maps that you can see, like when I zoom back in, we see that cantonment is marked in passing. It's not necessarily mapped because it was never the agenda. And so you don't necessarily get more information about the cantonment. It's just the leftover information or contextualizing information that you see in the maps. And then we fade that away, and then we superimpose another map, which is from 1858, pretty much the same information, except that the Martin's house and the Mehmood Bagh are prominent in this. The Martin's house is clearly defined. So that means until 1858, it was there. But you can also see that the British camp have started, flooding the cantonment more proactively. You can see more evidence of the camps, of ruins. Some things have become ruined and so on. And again, the Campbell advancement is very clearly marked out. We zoom back and then we fade that out. And then we have this map, which is essentially, again, 1858. It gives, I think, right now, this is the maximum information that one could have about the cantonment prior to it becoming the cantonment. I'll zoom into it a little bit more. And you can see that this is where the British camps, the location of the British camps, the location of the cavalry, the infantry, artillery, is very clearly identified. Near the Banda is the artillery park, and so is the artillery park near the Dilkusha. So they had located themselves close to important key locations in this precinct, which was yet to become the cantonment. And what was earlier called the Martin House becomes Martin Ka Katta, which I believe that the house fell down and it just became a neighborhood. And then we have other, villages spread over, but there is definitely a little bit more attention that is paid to the topographical features to identify perhaps where are the water sources or where to get your water from and where could you then lodge your army if you had to do a more permanent settlement. So this map seems like, it was definitely also documenting the location of the army during the uprising, but it also served to understand the topography of the area. So zooming back in and fading that out. Between 1858 to 1901, there are a couple of survey maps that I have come across, but I have not been able to lay my hands on that. It's still in the process. I've requested for that. So between that, I don't have anything to show. So there is a jump between the previous map and this map, which is a 1901 map, in which you can see that the cantonment has clearly materialized. And cantonment came about in the 1860s. So I don't have a map at the moment about that, but 1901 is when it completely materializes. And some of the interesting things that you can see here is, if I zoom into it, you can see an ice house at the top. I'm sorry, it's not allowing me to show the cursor. But anyway, near the railway line, right in the middle, just below the railway line, you can see ICEHO written. There was an ice house, a military prison right next to it, Dilkusha, and so on. So we zoom back out. These are some roads that started to emerge. It became more material. I mean, it started to become more and more rigid. But the things that you could not see clearly in that map, 1901, I've marked it out here. So you can see the ice house, military prison, ice factory. The Mahmood Bagh, you can start seeing that the yellow patch has been cut. It has been dissected in several directions. And a part of it has become a theater, a part of it is a racket court, and so on. This is something the British did proactively. They cut through a lot of gardens in Lucknow, including Sikandra Bagh, Musa Bagh, Kesar Bagh. They have been violently destructed by the British for various purposes. One was also to establish their control over the territory. And baghs were symbolic of something, of a culture that necessarily they did not approve of. And you can see that Dhania Mehri Bagh is also like no longer visible because they have located their parade grounds and all that in that area. Anyway, so the theater, which is marked here in the 1901 map, is the one which we call the Surya Auditorium now, and the racket court, which was there, is now like, again, one of the many aspects of the MB Club. We have Sultan's Bungalow, and we had 3 bath houses in the cantonment at that time, which was a combination of a swimming pool and an indoor swimming pool / bath house. And on my visit, Major General had also showed one of those buildings while we were visiting. So my conjecture is that it might be one of those buildings. I am now removing all the cartographic layers, and you can see it more clearly here. And then something that starts to appear, it is a conjecture that what you see here in blue and green are location of wells. Now that these are conjectural location of wells, there were something like 57 wells in the cantonment, and one of the wells is still visible. It was near the military prison. This is what the well looks like. It is a brick. It's a very unusual structure. It is built in brick. These are some of the images. Now, this is a report I found. It's an 1860s report, which enlists like more than 50 wells in Lucknow cantonment. And everywhere it said that, you can see the 3rd column, it says the quality of the water from here is good. And I have highlighted just one of them, which is considered the best water in these lines, is this one. If we go back to the map, the one in the cavalry lines, which is marked in green, is that well. Close next to the wells were these barracks, these kind of barracks that were constructed for both cavalry and infantry and artillery. This is this is a double-storied structure which is close to that well that I showed you. And this is a drawing that I was able to find. The only drawing which is available of the barracks that were made in Awadh, especially in Lucknow, and it was designed by Lieutenant Colonel Crommelin. These are the British cavalry barracks. It looks similar to what we are seeing here. Entry in the center at two places, otherwise it's a series of windows. But this one does, the one that we see here does not have an arcade. This one has an arcade. And then there are the services that are on the sides. Otherwise, it's a very linear building. And then there are beddings the beds or the dormitories that would be on the first floors. Coming back to the map, there were something like 7-8 churches in cantonment. Okay, I have to wrap up very quickly. I'll be quick. This is one of the churches, a very unusual church that you see in Lucknow cantonment. It's a half semi-dome church, very unusual. The only other typologies that are known to be semi-domes were in the Baroque churches. And it's in a very bad condition, but we, again, with the courtesy of Major General and some of the officers in the cantonment, we were able to document this church before it gets wiped out. And these are some of the drawings that we were able to develop. It's a complete brick building, and the roof is in wooden roof with slate shingles, and that half dome is kind of detached from the building for ease of visibility. You can see how the building is already deteriorating. The porch actually has already fallen off. The one that we see on the side is completely gone. And yeah, so we were able to, before it gets wiped out, we have drawings which might be useful in, taking this building further. And one last thing that I wanted to show is this very interesting Bibiapur Koti, which is very much part of the cantonment here. It's again it's a 18th century building, very Nawabi, but also very English. It combines the European lifestyle in a completely Nawabi building. We know Nawabs had a way of living in Lucknow, but this one exemplifies what an English or a European way of lifestyle was. You can see that there was a drawing room and a dining room combined with that linear kitchen area. And these are some conjectural drawings, again, my students have made at the CEPT University, Ahmedabad. And we are looking at a lot of paintings and compiling them together to conjecture what that building might have been like. So we are combining a lot of strategies, like using images from the site itself, making drawings, and then superimposing images. I'll just run through them, not explain a lot because it might take time. And so these are some conjectural works that we have done. We have come across a very interesting area where there is nothing that happens on the ground floor, but the column goes up and then the staircase starts on the higher floor. Very unusual. We are still yet to figure what it might be. And this is again, artistic representation of the outside of the building, how it looks like today and how it would have been earlier. So a combination of drawing and photographs. And these are images of Dilkusha Koti and the cantonment, like it was a deer park. You can see deer romping around, and the rest of the land is plain, pristine. This is an 1814 map, but we have already seen that in 1841, it was not necessarily mapped out. And this is again an image which is, I have not bought this image, and hence you can see the watermark. But again, it's an 1866 image. A lot of open ground outside of the Dilkusha, which is pretty much your cantonment. But we know that in 1866, there was a lot built up, but this painting is very much using a picturesque technique to just show the Koti. And you can see that it's also a very European form of construction. So this is an abrupt end to the talk, and that's about it for me. I hope you enjoyed the journey.
Absolutely, Sonal. Fascinating, professional, and beautifully projected. I think we are delighted. It will do a lot of good to Lucknow. It appears Lucknow was a smart city a long time back. It was known as possibly the best city. And again, we are getting into a smart city mode. So hopefully, we'll recapture some of that beauty. And looking at the barracks, I am reminded of the Kipling's poetry, Danny Deever, in which one of the soldiers was hanged in the courtyard in between the barracks. And that poetry became very famous in UK and USA. So it brings in so many good memories. It is also great for tourism, and about the story about the wells. So very nice. Gorakua, still we have a well there which supplies water to the cantonment. Fascinating. Thank you so much. We are deeply honored that you came and joined us. We are extremely thankful to Sonal Mittal for talking about the Lucknow, which is part of the Awadh, which broke away from the Mughals. And this beautiful presentation, I'm sure it will develop more and more better. We are truly indebted that you came and enlightened us. And thank you very much, audience. We are grateful that you came. And this video would be available on the YouTube after 1 or 2 days, so others can see it, those who have missed it. And it will be useful for students as well as history buffs and as well as the military people. Thank you so much. The chair today is Brigadier B.N. Singh. And Brigadier B.N., it is honor is yours. I've marginally overstepped, but please conclude.
Thank you, sir, and delighted to hear Madam Sonal Mittal. And ma'am, many answers which you wrote give further insight into the history of Lucknow cantonment, so close to us. On behalf of MLCF, my sincere thanks to the learned audience, whose presence always brings in abundance of positive energy to all of us. Our gratitude to everyone. Tomorrow, 31st October, gentlemen, we have got yet another very interesting session by veterans who have created a niche for themselves and talk about this as gold mine. That is, veterans, how they can contribute to nation building. Do join us. Until then, goodbye. Thank you very much.